Now loading this month's Leadership Live, where we dive in deep with today's top MedTech leaders, allowing you the chance to learn from the best. Leadership Live starts now.
Hello, Floodgate family, and welcome to another edition of Leadership Live. And this is a special one. I'm joined today by John Joyoprayitno, the president and CEO and co-founder of Alafair Biosciences. Thanks for joining me, John.
Thanks for having me. This is such a treat, and it's always good to see you.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. And I know a little bit about your story and background and company, but I think you come at this from a little bit of a different lens. You've got a story outside MedTech, founded a few different organizations. So before we get into kind of the leadership component, which will be most of this, I'd love for you to tell a little bit more about your story, your background, and then maybe cap it off with a little bit about what you guys are doing at Alafair.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. You are correct. I do have a pretty non-traditional background, for probably a lot different than most people that are in MedTech. But it's fun. It's been a great journey, and especially when you think of it in terms of leadership, I feel like my kind of diverse background has really been helpful in bringing maybe non-traditional leadership into the MedTech space. Certainly, I think, you ask anybody at Alafair, we've got a great culture, and I do things a little differently, but it seems to be working. So I graduated from undergrad I've been an entrepreneur since I graduated. So I graduated from undergrad, and when I was a few months later, when I was 23 years old, I got an SBA loan and I started a bicycle and triathlon shop here in Austin. Those were the glory days of Lance Armstrong. So everybody wanted to ride a bicycle. And 23 years old, first year in business, we sold $4 million in bicycles. Oh, wow. And it was like, okay, this is happening. And we had somewhere mid-20s, maybe up to 30 employees. So again, I was 23 and I had people working for me that were, you name it, from maybe a few people even in their teens all the way up to people that were in their 60s. And so, I guess you could say maybe I had a little bit of a natural leadership qualities, but talk about having to, jump in with both feet. It became a very serious business very quickly. So learned a ton. It was a great experience. And that's sort of where the MedTech connection started. We were sponsoring a cycling team called Team Brain and Spine. And so I got to know a lot of the local neurosurgeons that were on the hospital side. It was an Ascension-backed cycling team that we were the bike shop sponsor. So that was really my first intro to getting to know physicians, getting to understand. A lot of them became really good friends. One of them in particular, Dan Peterson, we also, during that journey, he was a customer, he was a friend. We realized that we had this real passion for a very specific set, type of automobile. So cars from the 20s through the 60s. And so 2 years later, when I was 25, we actually opened up a business called Austin Speed Shop. So it's a hot rod and custom shop, ground up build, very high standards. The details matter a lot. And so we're really honoring this era of history that's truly American. It was, an art form that was developed by, mostly, World War II vets coming back. They had some money in their pockets and could buy an old car and try to soup it up, make it go faster, make it look cooler. So we're really celebrating that era of those several decades of cars that were just made differently back then. They were made to last. It wasn't like some of the more plastic manufacturing that you've seen, really starting mid to late 60s. And certainly into now. But that was a really fun journey. So I ran that business. So again, I was 25 when we started that, and I ran that business for a number of years and grew it quite a bit for about 4 or 5 years. It was an excellent way for me to, again, so in the bike shop days, I got to, so we had a sales department, we had a service department, we had, receiving and accounting. And so getting to get exposure to different areas of business, and also have to manage these people, sometimes managing people that knew far more than I did at that point, and realizing everybody gets to learn from each other here. There's no point in which because you're the leader, that means that everyone needs to learn from you. I've been big on that since day one, is learn. There's something that you can learn from everyone. And so then, kind of fast forward to the speech shop, and really, other than, sales and fun, it's a fun business. But the other thing that I got to do a lot of was business development. We had relationships with companies like Red Bull and Nike. We did something with Fender guitars, Amazon. So it was really interesting to get to partner up with all of these companies, especially once we got the Formula One track, the Circuit of the Americas here in Austin. I mean, the big companies started coming to town, and we're the roots. Their engineers and the teams would show up early, before, a week or two before the race, and want to come hang out at the shop and see where it all came from, see how it all started, because that's what we were doing, the early days. So that was a lot of fun, and I just, all along the way, I both of those businesses, I created a really great network. So, again, learning from everybody, learning from my employees, learning from customers, learning from vendors, learning how does everybody operate? How do people do things? And so that was a great ride, but I kind of reached a point where I was becoming a pretty known person in that industry. And I just was having a blast, and I thought, you're going to do this forever if you keep doing this. But I just had this feeling that I wanted to do more. So I started going back to school, and I was going to go to medical school, and I was going to be a surgeon. I really enjoyed the getting to know all kinds of different successful people. But I think the medical field really called to me. I mean, both of my parents had struggled with some medical issues. They both had cancers, and so just being able to kind of spend time in hospitals, spend time around surgeons, and see the impact that they had on people's lives, that was really meaningful, and it really touched me, and I wanted to pursue that path. So I did about a little bit of, put in a little bit of time in school, but volunteering from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. at the hospital, running my business all day, school at night, studying when I should be sleeping, it just wasn't sustainable. And I was like, oh, you missed the boat here. So what happened from there was, I gave the keys of the business to my right-hand man. I said, call me if there's a problem. Otherwise, I need to go figure out what's next. And so I started another little business to have some extra income, and really sat back and thought about what's next. And so again, that building of network. If you have a good network, people just tend to take care of each other, and they want to help. If you're a good person, they want to help you out. And so what happened from there is, I was tapped on the shoulder by Dan Peterson, the neurosurgeon, and a venture capital friend, Jerry DeVries, and they said, hey, can you meet for coffee? So we met up, and they said, hey, Dan said, I found this technology. I was asked to come to the University of Texas Biomedical Engineering, give some feedback on the technologies that were being developed from a clinical perspective for those, PhD candidates that were doing their research that wanted something translational. And he said, I found one technology that I just can't stop thinking about. I've been doing a little bit of work with the university on it. He said, I think it's going to be the next big thing. And so he said, I'm not going to give up my practice. You're my business guy. We've done a number of things together at this point. He said, I know you're interested in medicine. What do you think? It may not be how you thought you were going to get into it. So I went and sat in on a few meetings with him. He introduced me to who ended up being our other co-founder, Sarah Mays. So she was the one that was inventing this technology while she was getting her PhD. And I am the more we get to know each other, you'll know a lot of the choices that I make about who I'm going to spend my life around and who I'm going to work with are incredible human beings. I love people, and I just have this philosophy that good people, you put them together and give them a great culture, and they can do anything together. I mean, just look at what we've done at Alafair. And so joined up with Sarah and Dan, and we decided to co-found Alafair Biosciences, license the technology from the university, and kind of the rest is history. It was really a science project in those first few years, but it was a great opportunity for me to just. I always drink from the fire hose. I don't think I know any other way to do it. I love learning. I love new things. I kind of can't get enough. So it gave me, those early days. I had a lot. It was a lot of opportunity to just learn everything I could about this industry. I knew I was going to need to learn about hospitals and contracting and distribution. So I started a distributorship also during that time that was a spine and neurosurgical distributorship, just to learn what makes everybody tick. Because that's another thing we'll get to later on is I just think it's really important to put yourself in everyone else's shoes, because everyone has to be able to win together. And so I needed to know, if we're going to have a product and I'm going to need to sell it eventually, I'm going to need to understand what's in it for the distributors, what's in it for the hospitals, what's in it for the physicians, and everyone in between. So that was a great experience. I went back and got my master's at the business school during that time also. And there's a few other things, but by and large focused on Alafair Biosciences. These days, other than that, I'm an operating partner with Keensight Capital, a private equity firm out of Paris. And that's also been I've just loads of experience, gotten to work with some of the smartest, best people I've ever met in my life. And, just fortunate to be able to kind of bolt on to my knowledge base that helps me with Alafair. Yeah. So, getting back to Alafair, when we first launched this product, it was the beginning of 2018, and it was just indicated for tendon. And, small company that no one had ever heard of, a technology that no one had ever heard of, people that they'd never heard of. It was really an uphill battle those first couple of years. But slowly but surely, we started to get adoption. We expanded our regulatory clearances so that we could sell on label for a lot of other indications. We have really broad indications, but the last few years have just been just epic growth, just very exciting. We've had, I think, the last 3 years. By the way, we've been EBITDA positive and had positive net operating income for the last 3 years. We've had 60% CAGR. So our growth has been great. We did mid-30s last year. We'll do over 50 million this year, I believe, and we're launching a new product, VersaCoat. So we launched it in November in a soft launch, but we're doing a full launch with all sizes in about a month from now. So we're really excited about it. VersaWrap kind of changed the game and revolutionized soft tissue protection, and VersaCoat flowable hydrogel is going to do it again, and it's the same base core technology. We refer to it as VersaCore, but it just provides a whole new way of looking at how do you treat soft tissue injuries. How do you can place it in areas that a sheet can't go. So that's really exciting. But really, number one is we've got this high molecular weight hyaluronic acid is just so critically important to the healing process, and this is a new way to be able to deliver that to the surgical site. So we're just so excited to be where we are and have so much growth and so many big plans ahead of us. We've got a strong pipeline. But the thing I'm most proud of is the team that we've built and the culture that we've created at Alafair. I mean, I think that's probably part of what you heard out there about our company is it's a fun place to work. We work our tails off, but we're having a great time doing it because we have the best culture, the best people. So yeah. I'm honored to be in a position to be able to be a leader, but also to be in a position where I have incredible people that I get to learn from every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's awesome times you guys are with the tailwinds, momentum that you have right now. But I think your leadership story is unique, not just coming outside MedTech, but starting so early, right? And getting kind of thrown into the fire and having that self-awareness to be like, hey, I'm young and I need to learn from some of these people and not come in, sort of overconfident. And I'm sure that stratifies through your career to today. So that's really great. I think that'll inform some of these questions that we'll go through here in this conversation. So I appreciate you sharing that. And before we get into it, I want to highlight a couple of things about you. I know you've got a bunch of different recognitions and awards out there, a couple of the most recent ones, so people know that the information you're sharing is not is accurate. 2024 Austin Business Journal's Best CEO Award and 2025 Inc.'s Business Leader of the Year list. So a couple of high pedigree awards there, and I'm sure more to come in the future. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much. It's it's always such a funny thing, those awards. I do appreciate them. They mean a lot to me. I mean, I've sacrificed and put a lot of myself into my work over the years. But it is a strange thing because it's such a team effort. Every single business, you rely on other people, and I always tell everyone those awards and that recognition, it belongs to everybody on my team. That's not. I mean, I may be the one receiving it, but that's a compliment to everybody that's been involved.
I love it. Well, transitioning on that same kind of vein, as you look at the key attributes. Of course, you've led in outside of MedTech, in MedTech. It's a unique space, kind of like you alluded to. What would you say kind of the key attributes are in MedTech to be that strong leader?
Yeah, that's there are a lot of different types of leaders, right? I mean, you're just looking at this at the interviews that you've done in the past. It's like just so many different kinds of people. I mean, there are certainly some common threads. I think one of the attributes that's maybe I'm curious. I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder how much of this can be learned versus just is innate. But high EQ, I think, is incredibly important to being a great leader. It's also that's a really important one for being able to build a truly incredible culture. Because I think you have to be the type of person that cares about the people around you, and you have to mean it. If you don't actually care about them and you treat them like just interchangeable, okay, great, well, we can just plug this person in instead. I just don't, it doesn't work for me. I just am shocked at how many companies, manage that way. I think care about your people, especially when you're talking about smaller companies, small and mid-sized companies, innovative companies, because you're asking a lot from everybody. So I always tell people, lead with love. Love your people, care about your people, treat your people with respect. And if they truly, hey, look, we're in an industry where we have the privilege of working with some of the most intelligent, smartest, highest performing people out there. And they'll know if you're not genuine. They'll know if you don't mean it. They'll know if you're just giving them lip service. But if they know genuinely that you care about them, you care about their families, you care about their lives, you care about their happiness, you care about what they're doing in their work and making sure that they feel fulfilled, they'll do anything for you. And being on a journey like this, you need to be surrounded by people that will do anything for you. And you need to make sure that they know that you have their back and you'll do anything for them. So I think that's a huge attribute, is being able to bring that. Again, I realize that when you get to be a much, much larger, one of the large cap companies, public company businesses, things are a bit different. But when you're talking about innovation and growth, again, it's just I'm not sure if I would say family-like, but you do want people to feel like they're a part of something important. One of our core values at Alafair is win, 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 win. So that's five wins. And we say, when patients win, surgeons win, hospitals win, distributors win, and Alafair wins. We all win together. And, going back to the distributorship conversation I was talking about, you need to know what that means for people. What is a win? Because what a hospital wants certainly is not always what a surgeon wants, right? When they, they look the different lenses. So try to position it to where you really consider, what does everyone consider a win? And make sure that you're bringing that to every conversation you have. Every time you're thinking about an agreement, every time you're thinking about how am I going to go out and approach the world, it's like you want everybody to win around you. And the philosophy of we win, you lose. I won. For me to win, someone else has to lose. I just can't get behind that, and it just breaks my heart how many people there are out there that feel that way and run their businesses or their lives that way. No, if you want to create a good culture, everybody has to win together. So that's an attribute of kind of bringing that. I think kind of along those same lines, celebrate everyone. As I said, those awards sometimes go to myself or Sarah or Dan. The people at the top are often the ones that get the awards, but you need to make sure that every single person in your company feels recognized and understands how important their work is. Because, I always like to go back to thinking about people that are working on spreadsheets all day. That's pretty far from delivering something where you get to see a patient's life be improved because of something that you did. But so I always try to make sure to connect the dots for those people and make sure they understand the job that they're doing. How does it support the mission of Alafair, which is, focus on patients. We need to improve patient lives. And so we couldn't do it without the person that's packing and shipping product. We couldn't do it without the people that are managing spreadsheets or contracts or, the things that maybe feel a little bit less glamorous as far as the, patient facing. So I think a good attribute is making sure that you're showing people what the importance of their work is and connecting it to the mission of the company. A couple more: know when speed is appropriate and when it's dangerous. I love to go fast, and that in all the ways that that could mean probably, but it can be dangerous sometimes. You need to know when to pump the brakes. You need to know that, okay, sometimes in certain areas of sales, maybe you want to go fast, but guess what? There's times in regulatory, for example, you don't want to go fast. You need to make sure that you're being thoughtful about your approach, thoughtful about your decisions, thoughtful about the way that you're, moving through that process, and work, collaborating with the FDA, for example. Don't go too quickly, because that's when mistakes are made in those really critical areas. And sometimes you just can't, you can't course correct after you make certain mistakes. So being able to bring that, knowing when to help your people know, okay, go, or hey guys, hold on a second. Let's talk about this. Let's circle up. Let's think this through. I that 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, always start with the end in mind. That's another one that I just think the earlier in life people can learn that. I've got a 5-year-old and a today turned 7-year-old boy, and I realize they're young and they're probably not going to listen to anything old dad has to say, but but I do try to teach them, like, okay, so that's something you want to go do right now. Well, why are you doing that? I kind of try to connect the dots of start with the end in mind. It helps people visualize the path that they need to what they need to do to get there. And if you just start and you don't think about where you want to end up, you may not, it may be a much more difficult path to be where you end up. Sometimes being a leader can mean being a therapist for your team. So I think being a good listener, being a really good listener, because if you don't take the time to really understand where somebody's coming from or what their issues are, you can't really help them with them. So listen first. What is it? Seek first to understand, and then to be understood.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I love that. And that's, so many great nuggets there, but I think the underpinned theme was a line that I'm going to steal, but that you said earlier there is lead with love, right? Uh-huh. And to answer your initial question of, is it like a nature versus nurture thing? I think, everybody's got a different starting point, right? Some people it's more inherent, but I think you'd probably agree it's something you always got to be working on and be cognizant of, and getting into leadership so early, such as yourself did. You probably made, learned from some of those mistakes early that now, in some situations where you maybe didn't lead with love because the reaction. So I think that's a really good way to sum up all of those things that you mentioned. You've touched on it a little bit, but as we transition to kind of building great cultures, that's a buzzword that everybody uses, but how do you, 2 parts, create, that's one thing, but also maintain, especially as you grow, a great culture within an organization?
Yeah, that is a tough one. And I'm sure the answer can vary greatly, because I think, again, it goes back to, you do have to be genuine. You have to be authentic. People really value authenticity from their leaders. So as far as creating a good culture goes, I think the number one thing is hiring the right people and then trusting them to do their job. Bring on people that I love hiring people that I know. When I find outstanding people in this world, I keep them close, and because you just never know. And there's so many people that I've been able to give an opportunity to. They hadn't, I've had people that didn't have any experience doing their jobs, but I was just, this is a great human. I know they can do it. So you bring in great humans. You make sure that they feel that you trust them. You give them the right training and the right opportunity, and the fact that you believed in them and gave them this chance, it builds loyalty that will last far beyond whatever work that you're doing at that time. They'll see you as the person that gave them the chance, and if you pick the right people, they're going to want to show you made the right decision. You trusted me, and I'm going to show you that I got this. And I think that having you can't have all people like that, but I think having enough of those type of people in a culture tends to be great. And then otherwise, you have other people. It all comes down to hiring. Getting the right candidate is just so critical. And sometimes I've hired people that I've known for years. We've hired people that came to us through our network. I love pinging my network, because in this industry, particularly when you're talking about earlier stage companies, they'll, some of them exit, some of them fail. And it doesn't mean, either one of those, there's good and bad people. But if you can pick up the people that were part of the magic that helped make things happen, that's a great way to do it. We've worked with recruiters and been able to have people help us. We're very clear about what we need. Like culture fits number one. It's culture fits number one. one bad egg or one person that doesn't fit well with your culture doesn't necessarily mean they won't do a great job somewhere, but they need to be able to fit in your culture if you want to continue to have success. So I think it's all about people, trust, and then giving them the resources that they need to succeed. If you get out of their way, that's what I always say, is bring on the right people, give them what they need, and get out of the way. That's what a good leader does, is just cheerlead them, make them feel loved, make them feel supported, and you'll get great results.
Yeah, and you're bringing on the right people under that same philosophy that compounds over time, and that culture just grows and builds with the organization rather than losing it as you get bigger. That's awesome. Well, we've talked about a lot of the good stuff. There's always some landmines that you hit along the way, especially being in leadership as long as you've been. What are maybe one or two lessons in leadership that you've had to learn the hard way? We all have some of them.
Yeah. So it takes many years to achieve success in this industry, particularly in MedTech. If you're starting with a new technology, it takes years, and you have to be prepared for that. I always try to tell people that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. I know that's kind of a popular thing to say, but it's true. I realized a few years ago that I don't really care for the term work-life balance, because it makes it sound like there's work and then there's everything else, and you've got to find this balance. And I chased that for years because frankly, I didn't have it. I mean, there were years where I'd sleep 3 to 5 hours a night, and that's it. And there's no real balance building, because it was all, especially as a small business owner, it was all on my shoulders. How do we, making payroll, taking care of these people's families. And so I had a tough time with that. So I always just say work is life for some people. And doesn't have to be your whole life, but it's just that it's not work-life balance. It's just balance. You will be a better leader if you're doing other things in your life that will help you learn, expose you to other things, give you time to reflect. I remember I was about 10 years into being an entrepreneur before I took my first real vacation. I took 2 weeks. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Unplugging and stepping away, and but after by about that's halfway through that second week, I just hit this moment where I realized that I was relaxed. I was seeing the world totally different than how I had been, and I came back with ideas and new initiatives that I just had. When you're in the trenches, that you just can't think about. So being able to have other things in life that give you a little bit of distance, it really helps you see the big picture. But starting at 23, it can't be, it can't be all work all the time. It's got to be, there's got to be some balance, but work can be just a part of your life always, and make sure that you're communicating that to your partners and families, like, right. Hey, this is what you can expect. This is important. And this is just who I am. So, I think, another piece of lessons is people are your most valuable assets. Doesn't matter what your IP is, doesn't matter what your regulatory is, if you don't have the right people, and toxicity spreads so quickly if it's not addressed. It's unbelievable. I mean, I will just say, earlier in my career, I was very guilty. I was like, oh, I'm a nice guy, I like to give people a chance, and it'll turn around. There were people that I kept around way too long that were bringing down the entire organization, entire departments. And instead of facing it, I would let it go on, thinking that they would change, thinking that I could talk to them and that it would change. And at the end of the day, what I realized is, as soon as you just know that somebody is toxic, instead of letting that destroy a whole team, address it quickly, and the relief, it's like breathing new air and new life. You see it happen. A team can be so happy and energized and thankful that you made a hard decision and did that. So address issues head on and swiftly. There's the slow to hire, quick to fire thing. So try to hire right from the beginning, but also act quickly once you know that somebody's not the right fit, or particularly if they're toxic to your culture.
Mm-hmm. Right. Everyone's going to make mistakes, right? So understanding that and having the humility to say, hey, this isn't best for us. This isn't best for the person. And I love that sort of articulation on balance, that because I think that's so, especially for young entrepreneurs. I don't think just in MedTech, I would venture to say across all industries, it's a difficult thing when you're in the moment to understand the importance of balance, not just for your mental health and sanity, but also to be effective at your job. If you're too in the business, you really can't have that holistic, wide lens view that you mentioned came, 10 days into vacation. So that's a really good perspective. Transitioning to, something you've also talked about. I mean, it goes hand in hand with hiring and culture, but as your company grows, the people that are important that you mentioned, developing higher performers is something that's important to get the company from point A to point B and beyond. What's sort of your philosophy around developing high performers within your organization?
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? I kind of talked a little bit about giving people a chance and making them feel trusted. It's amazing how much people will step up if you give them the right opportunity and the right resources. But if you hire the right people and put them in the right environment and culture, I just find that I only have the experience of what I've done in my companies, but if you right people, right place, right culture, right resources, you almost don't even need to motivate them. If you've hired the right people, they're going to be motivated already. They're going to want to perform for you. A lot of the high performers that I've worked with do have a natural X factor. So, I've had this question of, kind of going back to what we were talking about EQ. It's like, can you learn that? Can you improve that? Or is it something that you kind of have or you don't? I do think you can develop it, because I've worked with people on it, and I've seen improvement. Sometimes there are those people that are just superstars out of the gate that have a super high EQ. But I encourage everybody that wants to grow into, kind of being a high performer to find at least one mentor. A lot of times it's hard to just in the context of your own work or your own company, where you have other obligations, you have other ways that you're approaching everything. But if you can find an outside mentor, take the time, choose wisely. I really encourage people to do this. Interview a bunch of people that might be the right person, and go spend time with them. And then at some point, if you can almost ask them, would you consider being a mentor? And I think that's one of the best ways that you can learn is outside of your job, is trying to emulate the things that you see in others that are where you, again, always start with the end in mind. See somebody that is where you want to be, and go figure out exactly what they're doing, and do it. Other thing with high performers, I've talked about trust a good bit. It's amazing to watch people grow when you give them a big opportunity and give them the confidence that they can, that they're trusted. Also pay them. I see some early stage companies that it's, well, like it or not, people need to be fairly compensated. And, it's hard for someone to feel good about their work when they feel like they're, working for pennies and living off of ramen, and, I've had those things happen, and, but it's, when you give people, someone a good solid salary, there's such a value that comes with that gives them confidence that they need to deliver, because they're not going to want to go back to what they were making before if you're giving them an opportunity to step up to a higher role. More carrot, less stick. The high performers will always work for the carrots. So how do you asked how do you develop high performers, but how do you know which ones are the ones worth putting your time into? Mm-hmm. Put carrots out there and see who's running towards the carrots. Those people that'll work hard. The ones that need the stick, they're probably not the right people for me to put my time into. It's just you either want it or you don't. Right.
Yeah.
And then lastly, it's be an example for your team. Be a high performer every day. Show up, show them how you want it done. I think that's one of the main things that leaders need to do, is set a good example. And so I think that probably sums it up.
Yeah, that's great. I love that bit on mentorship. I mean, it's something that, hardly ever is somebody trying to do something for the first time. So go find somebody that's done it. Yeah. And similar to listening to this podcast, avoid some of the mistakes that they made and take that guidance. It's hard enough as it is. So I love that. That's great. That's great, Chair. Well, we've talked about this a little bit as well, but we've talked about how you found talent, right? Through your network through the years. You've been well networked in the area, in the space, and also through different firms. But evaluating that talent, what's your philosophy when it comes to finding and evaluating talent sort of holistically?
Absolutely. I love to find people that have a very positive can-do attitude. There are those people that are just like, oh, all right, well, like that's a problem. Well, let's figure out how to fix it. Versus like, here's a problem. Who can I call? It's like I really love those can-do people, and I think that that's really critical in growth stage companies. When you're talking about early stage and growth stage, probably really different than like, for example, who Stryker might be looking for to hire. Not that they don't want can-do people, but it is a different skill set that you need when you're dealing with new early stage technology, because it is problem solving all the time. So that attitude about how to approach the problem solving is critical. I love hiring people who haven't been in a position for very long. If you find somebody that, oh, I've been doing this for my whole career for 40 plus years, it's like if they have, it's a lot easier to train someone to have good habits than it is to untrain someone to have other habits. So not to say that experience is bad. Experience can be great, but make sure it's the right experience in the right cultures. When I'm evaluating talent, I really like to dive into where is that sweet spot of I've had enough experience, but I'm still highly motivated for growth in my career. That's really important to me. I personally like to interview almost every position that we hire for to ensure that there's a culture fit, to ensure that I understand how motivated is this person going to be. Referrals and references are very valuable to me. I think sometimes people do an interview and they rely on the resume and they rely on but those references where you can call and check and talk to people, spend time on that, because again, it's all about hiring the right people. And these are people that have worked with these people and had experience when you don't. And There are some people out there that interview really well and don't have these other attributes that we're looking for. Sales is really clear and measurable. Usually you can look at someone's track record to see where were they, what kind of products were they, what did they hit sales targets, did they develop new markets? But there are other functions that are much more nuanced, and those are ones that typically other than the culture piece, it really takes a lot of time, because for example, if you're hiring someone in regulatory, well, that can mean a lot of different things, right? I mean, just if someone doesn't have experience, if they've been doing biologics and they don't have experience in medical device, I mean, not that there's not plenty of crossover, but really make sure that they have the right expertise. And then lastly, I really like to involve my team. In order for someone to be accepted by the current culture and by the team, make sure that the key people get a say. Let them give you their opinion. They may see something that you don't. And especially if they're going to have to be working with these people all day, make sure that they got to choose that person too. And it's not just you're kind of shoving a new person down their throat that they didn't really ever say that they wanted to work with. So I think that those are the key things.
That's fantastic. And I mean, it's what I'm loving, John, is how consistent you are across all of these answers, right? I mean, it's all tying back to the person, to the culture, to the fit within the organization, more so than, of course, like you mentioned, in some certain roles, like the technical roles and regulatory, the experience is important. But finding you would take, if I'm reading between the lines, the person with the wrong experience, right culture over the inverse, night and day. So that's good to hear. Well, looking at people inside your organization, whether they're younger, older, that want to take that next step into leadership, it's often a difficult thing to do, right? Because it's not for everybody. What would you say aspiring leaders should do to be tapped for that first leadership opportunity?
That is a good question. I think that if you want to be a leader, take it. It's yours for the taking. That's on whoever that person is that wants to find their way into a leadership role. Don't wait. Become a leader. Don't wait to be given an opportunity. Make the opportunity. Be a leader. Show up, look and communicate like a leader. Take care, just like all the things I mentioned earlier on, be a leader to the people around you. Teach people, offer people a helping hand. Start acting that way, or with the people that are in your immediate sphere, and you will get noticed. Those things will get noticed. You will naturally rise up as a leader among the people that you're working with if you do those things. Again, I think people should find a mentor. What kind of a leader do you want to be? There are a lot of different kinds of leaders. I'm certainly not the same as as many others in this industry. So find someone that you feel like that's the kind of leader that I want to be. Figure out how to make them your mentor and emulate what they're doing. And then offer solutions, not problems. I feel like a lot of times the people that are the real natural leaders, when they come and they bring up a problem, which I always appreciate people speaking up, by the way, that's a really important. And I always try to make sure, we have a pretty open door policy. Like anybody can come walk in and tell me what's on your mind, and we'll listen. And bring solutions. If you're going to bring a problem, bring solutions. And I realize that that's not 100% of the time if you're bringing something, but most of the time you can bring some solutions. It doesn't even have to be the right solution, but it shows you were thinking about it. It shows you were thinking, I'm going to bring this to you, and I thought about how we might be able to solve this together. I love that. Volunteer and take on more responsibility. If you see another team that's struggling, let's see, we've got the launch. So our marketing team is just overwhelmed right now, getting ready for this launch of VersaCoat. We're so excited about it. Everybody in the company is excited about it, and it's been neat to see that there have been other people from other departments that have said, you know what, they've got a most important job to do right now. We can take this on for you guys and to take care of this, which normally we pass it over to you to help make your job easier. But showing that you're being thoughtful and considering where other people are, what their challenges are, and helping them with that, it absolutely gets noticed. And I think the world of people that see their teams that way, even outside of their teams, they're within their organizations. And then help train people. If there's someone that's new or someone that hasn't done something, but that they'd like to learn. I think sometimes people they think knowledge is this thing that if they have it and others don't, that's going to work for them. No way. That never works. Like, teach everybody everything whenever they want to know it. And you will learn by teaching them. You'll learn something from them by teaching them something that you already know. But boy, do people recognize that, because you're helping bring people from the organization up. What do leaders do? They coach people. They help people come up. So you're showing that you already are that person by being able to do that. And it can be something simple. This doesn't have to be complicated learnings. It can be, we have a fancy coffee machine, and this is how you descale. I mean, someone's got to do it in an early stage company, like anything like that, where you're teaching people how to do something. It gets, I notice it anyway.
Yeah.
And then really it's just speak up and start new initiatives. Like, don't be afraid to insert yourself. I mean, know the appropriate person to go to, but if you have an idea, speak up, because that's what leaders do. They speak up, and when they have an idea that they really believe in, they advocate for themselves, they advocate for it, and they bring it to others. And sometimes it's like, you kind of have to approach it like, who cares if your supervisor brings it up the ladder? Sometimes I think people feel like they have to get the credit for it. People will know. It will. Don't worry about that. Just if you've got an idea that you feel strongly about, speak up. So yeah, I think that's it. So
I love that. I mean, I think the overarching theme there is somewhat of a sense of ownership, right? Is rather than looking, what can the company do for me to put me in a leadership position? It's what can I do for the company to earn that leadership position, right? And coming at it with that posture it sounds like what you're saying.
I've had a few businesses where there's a piece of trash sitting outside in somewhere near the front door, and it never fails. If I'm in my office and I can see out the window and I can see this piece of trash, it's amazing to see how many people will look at it or walk right by it. And then inevitably it's somebody who is the one that takes that ownership, like you just said, and treats the business as if it's theirs. They care that much. They pick up the trash. Inevitably, those are the people that tend to really shine as leaders. And I mean, that's a little bit of a soft example, but it's something I've noticed. So
I love it. Battlefield promotion. You see the person who leaves the trash out, and you go and give them promotion right away. Well, to close things out, I like to start with a very serious and stoic question. I'm kidding, of course. Who, John, is your favorite superhero, and why?
I love this question. I really do. I think that So of course I'd love to say Iron Man, because who doesn't want to be Tony Stark and have a garage full of awesome cars? But I think probably the thing that resonates with me the most, and always has. So do you remember the Batman Begins series of movies with Christian Bale as Batman? There's a line in there where it says, it's not who you are on the inside, it's what you do that defines you. I literally think about that every single day since I've heard that movie. It doesn't matter what you think on the inside. It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't speak up and you don't show up that way and you don't present yourself in that way, that's not who you are. It's not who you are on the inside. It's what you do that defines you. So because of that, I'm going to have to go with Batman.
That's great. I don't remember that line, but that's really good. It's like, it's your actions. It's not your intentions. That doesn't matter. That's fantastic. That's awesome. Well, this has been really fun, John. I wish we could keep going, but I've already kept you longer than I said I would. And I know I've learned a whole ton. I had to stay locked in, but I'm gonna have to go back and watch this and write some stuff down. And I'm sure everybody watching has been taking their own notes. I really appreciate your time. It was good getting to know you a little bit better, your leadership philosophies, exciting stuff going on at Alafair. So I'm looking forward to watching that. And I know you guys are bound for success, and I look forward to watching you guys crush it.
Thanks for having me. This has been a blast. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much, everybody.